Stayed at a campsite last night, couple of tenths of a mile off trail, and this morning we're hiking into Great Barrington, and trail crosses the edge of town. And about a half mile in, we're gonna get some lunch, then head back out on the trail and look for some place to drop the tent. It's pretty stormy this morning, so not a really great view here, but it's not too bad. Been a pretty rocky climb down to this though this morning. Rained on us a little, but it's let up now. It's supposed to kick back up around this afternoon and then again at 6. Here we are at the last battle of Shays Rebellion. Was fought in that field February 27th, 1787. Can't really recall what Shays Rebellion was. Something to do with taxes, I thought. We'll check out the billboard over here.
Shays Rebellion. The Revolutionary War began in 1775 and ended in 1783. It left the country heavily in debt. To reduce the debt, taxes were imposed. Whether fact or fancy, it was generally believed that the heaviest tax burden fell on the poorest citizens. The poor, primarily farmers, were already reeling from personal debt. Farmers' debt rose exponentially during the Revolutionary War. When they left their farms and took up arms to help win the war, their crops suffered and profits plummeted. Though promised compensation for military service, it was not paid or paid in worthless currency. The farmers were forced to borrow to pay taxes and then could not repay the loans. Debtors were hauled into court where harsh laws favored the lenders. Their land and assets were seized and the farmers were imprisoned. The combination of these economic pressures and the laws created desperate debtors. This must now put the people in a most zealous search for remedies, for representatives who can find means to redress the grievances of the people. From the Connecticut Concurrent, 1787. They are, the Concurrent concluded, the most discontentedest. The most discontentedest became the soldiers in Shays Rebellion. Their anger was forced on the courts where foreclosures, bankruptcies, and incarcerations were sanctioned. Shays' men were called the regulators because they wanted to regulate the laws that disproportionately favored the wealthy. The regulators wanted more protection for the poor. This is an excerpt from the Berkshire Edge by Carol Owen, May 21, 2018. The last battle of Shays Rebellion, February 27, 1787. Shays Rebellion had economic roots in the long-standing English tradition of agrarian revolts, as well as in the resentment of rural Massachusetts of the political and financial dominance of Boston. The inability of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts forces to pursue the rebels across state lines strengthened the case for a strong federal government under the new United States Constitution. Shays Rebellion was an early test of the limits of state government after American independence. Many of those who took up arms on the side of the regulators of government, as they preferred to call themselves, were young men who had served during the Revolution and still considered their actions patriotic. Others saw them as dangerous counter-revolutionaries. The fight that took place here in Sheffield in the winter of 1787 was the last significant conflict of Shays' rebellion. Sheffield men were in the ranks of the local militia, as well as the body of rebels led by Perez Hamlin, originally from Sharon, Connecticut, but having since moved to Lenox. Hamlin and his men, 100 strong, crossed over from New Lebanon, New York, during the night of February 26 to 27, 1787. Some of those under arms with Hamlin had deep roots in Berkshire communities, while others were recent arrivals or were merely that would later be termed border ruffians, motivated more by plunder than principle. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Thomas Ingersoll and some Great Barrington militia that were loyal to the government pulled back from town at Hamlin's approach and joined with Colonel John Ashley Jr. and about 40 Sheffield militia several miles to the south. Another body of loyal militia under William Walker of Lenox followed in Hamlin's wake, setting the stage for a confrontation in Sheffield before the rebels were able to recross to safety in New York. The fight that took place that afternoon near this monument was short and bloody. Ingersoll's men fired on the head of Hamlin's column from the shelter of trees on the side of the road, and Ashley's men did the same from the other side. Walker's men from Lenox arrived soon after and swept up the rebels from the rear. During the firing, at least 2 of the regulators of government were killed or mortally wounded, Aziel Wilcox of Lee and Joshua Rathbun of Tyringham, and a much larger number that included Captain Perez Hamlin were wounded. Almost 80 were eventually captured and held prisoner in Pittsfield and Great Barrington. On the side of the government, one Great Barrington man was killed, Ephraim Porter, whose gravestone still stands in the Mahawi Cemetery. Solomon Glens Jr. was killed in the crossfire and is buried with a marble headstone in Stockbridge. The number of wounded on the government side was very slight. The only one who has been identified was a Yale student who was at home at the time in Richmond, Massachusetts, and volunteered in Walker's force. Young Hugo Burghardt was hit in the arm and right breast by a musket loaded with a ball and 3 pieces of swan shot, but recovered from his wounds and eventually returned to school. Most of the prisoners were eventually pardoned, though 8 were deemed to be ringleaders, including Nathaniel Austin of Sheffield, were sentenced to death. Some escaped, and none of these were ultimately hanged, though 2 other housebreakers convicted of theft not directly associated with Hamlin's raid were condemned and hanged.
There is a wonderful sign. Well, we stopped at that Trail Magic. Drifter was so into the food, he forgot to record anything. But nice people. They set up there every year, and hamburgers and hot dogs. I had 2 really good dogs, relish, ketchup, mustard.
Blue had one.
Blue had one. Hot dog, and I had some iced tea, and just a very nice rest, and kind of needed it after coming down off the mountain. Blue fell twice, and Drifter cracked himself pretty good one time also, so it was nice. Told him we really appreciate it, and it's nice to see that out on the trail. It was church sponsored. I can't think of the name of the church right now, but we'll add it to the comments if we took a picture of it. This must be our lucky day. First we get 2 hot dogs back there, iced tea. Now we're almost in Great Barrington. We come upon 2 coolers, left compliments from Steady Stream, and Blue's got herself a Fanta orange, and that's what I got. They're ice cold. You can see there's still ice in the cooler. Then people put their empties there and they pick them up. I'll tell you what, this Trail Magic is great. Much thanks to Steady Stream and all the people who do this for the hikers, because the trail can be expensive, and this is just a super way for them to help the hikers out on their hike. Bye.